She agrees to sing as a fake bride at a wedding unaware, the CEO watching plans to make it real. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The chandelier lights glowed like molten gold inside the grand ballroom of the Westmont Hotel. Music floated through the air, soft and luxurious, while waiters in crisp uniforms glided between tables. On stage, Lena Cruz adjusted the veil that had been pinned to her hair only minutes ago. The lace tickled her cheek. The gown was not hers, it belonged to the costume department, but under those lights, she looked every bit the bride she had never been. Her palms were damp, and her heartbeat echoed louder than the orchestra. This is just a gig, she whispered to herself. One song, one paycheck. At 26, Lena had sung in bars, weddings, and late-night diners, anywhere people would listen and tip enough to keep her mother's medical bills from swallowing them whole. This, however, was different. Tonight she was being paid to pretend, to play the fake bride in a staged wedding performance designed to impress investors at a luxury resort launch. She was supposed to smile, walk down the aisle, and sing the love song someone else had written. Nothing more, nothing personal. She took a slow breath, gripping the silver microphone the stage manager handed her. Tiny letters were engraved at the base, "Promise." It felt heavier than it should, as if it carried a secret she was not meant to hold. "Ready, Miss Cruz?" a voice asked through the earpiece. She nodded, forcing a smile. "Ready. En signal. It is a plan of the bread matter de their hosti." Out in the crowd, sitting quietly in the front row, Ethan Ward, the CEO whose company funded this entire event, leaned back in his chair. His suit was perfectly tailored, his expression unreadable. To the world, Ethan was the man who built empires with logic and numbers. To himself, he was just tired. Tired of the hollow parties. Tired of people who treated love like a contract. And yet, when Lena walked onto the stage, something in him stilled. She was nervous. Clearly not one of the polished socialites he met every week, but there was sincerity in the way she held the mic. The spotlight hit her, washing the crowd into darkness. For a heartbeat, she forgot her debt, her exhaustion, her mother's hospital room. Only the melody existed now. She began to sing. Her voice was gentle at first, trembling like candlelight in wind, then grew steady, warm, soulful, alive. The lyrics spoke of promises kept and hearts found too late. It was not perfect, but it was real, and that truth carried farther than any trained vibrato ever could. The ballroom fell silent. Forks stopped midair. Even the violinist lowered his bow. Ethan felt something twist inside his chest, a pulse he had not recognized in years. When the final note faded, Lena lowered the microphone, breathless. The applause came slow, then thunderous. Cameras flashed, but she barely saw them. She just smiled faintly, as if the noise belonged to someone else's life. Behind the curtain, the event coordinator rushed over. "You were amazing. They loved it. Tomorrow you will get your payment $2,000, as agreed." Lena exhaled. $2,000. Enough to keep the lights on, to pay another week at the hospital. "Thank you," she whispered. She did not notice the man still seated in the front row, watching her leave the stage. Ethan turned the microphone over in his hand after she set it down, his thumb brushing the engraved word, "Promise." He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that carried danger and curiosity in equal measure. "She does not even know," he murmured. "But that song, that voice, I am not letting it end here." Outside, the night wind lifted Lena's borrowed veil as she stepped into the quiet street. The applause still rang in her ears, echoing like a dream she could not keep. She pulled her coat tighter, unaware that somewhere behind her, the CEO who had never believed in love was already planning to turn her one-night performance into something real. Rain washed over the New York skyline the next morning, streaking the cafe windows where Lena Cruz sat hunched over a chipped mug of coffee. The steam had already faded, but she kept her hands around the cup for warmth. Her phone buzzed beside her, flashing a text from the hospital. "Payment due tomorrow." She bit her lip. The $2,000 from last night's performance had not been transferred yet. She needed it to cover her mother's dialysis session. If the payment came late, the hospital would suspend treatment. The thought made her stomach knot. She opened her worn notebook, flipping to a page filled with half-written lyrics. At the top, she had scrawled, "Until Forever." It was the song she had written for her mother months ago, back when things still felt hopeful. Her pen hovered above the page, but no new words came. Just the sound of rain tapping on the glass, steady and soft, like a clock counting down. Across town, Ethan Ward stood before a floor-to-ceiling window in his penthouse office, the same silver microphone resting on his desk. He turned it in his hands as his assistant spoke about quarterly reports, but he barely heard a word. All he could think about was the woman in the white gown, the one who sang with trembling hands and a fearless heart. "Ethan," his assistant, Claire, prompted. "Should I confirm the meeting with the hotel investors?" He blinked. "Postpone it." Claire raised an eyebrow. "That is the third one this week." He set the microphone down gently. "Find out who performed last night at Westmont. The singer, not the orchestra. I want her name." Claire hesitated. The entertainment company might consider that a privacy issue. Ethan gave her a look that ended the discussion. "Then find a way around it." By evening, Lena returned to her small apartment above a closed convenience store. The walls were thin, the air smelled faintly of bleach, and the flickering hallway light buzzed like an anxious thought. She checked her email for payment confirmation, nothing. She leaned back against the door and sighed. Her phone rang. Unknown number. "Miss Cruz?" a woman's voice said politely. "This is Claire Bennett, assistant to Mr. Ethan Ward of Ward Financial Group. Mr. Ward would like to meet with you tomorrow morning, if you are available." Lena froze. "I am sorry. Who?" "Ethan Ward. He attended last night's event." Her mind raced. "The CEO? The man whose company funded the wedding performance? Is this about the payment?" "I believe it concerns something more personal," Claire said, her tone professional but warm. "Mr. Ward asked me to assure you that it is not a performance audition. He simply wishes to speak with you." The line clicked off before Lena could ask anything more. She stared at the phone, unsure whether to laugh or panic. The next morning, she stood before the glass towers of Ward Financial, feeling entirely out of place in her thrift store blazer and scuffed shoes. The lobby gleamed like a cathedral of wealth-polished marble floors, gold lettering, and an endless reflection of people who looked as if they belonged there. At the reception desk, a woman smiled. "Miss Cruz? Mr. Ward is expecting you." Lena followed her into a private elevator. Her reflection in the mirrored walls looked nervous but determined. "You survived worse," she told herself. "You can survive this." When the elevator doors opened, Ethan was already waiting by the window. The city stretched behind him, silver and alive. "Miss Cruz," he greeted, extending a hand. "Thank you for coming." His voice was calm, but there was a gravity to it that made her heart quicken. She shook his hand lightly. "Of course. I was not sure why you wanted to see me." He gestured for her to sit. "Last night, your song caught my attention." Lena smiled awkwardly. "That means a lot, sir. I was just hired for the one show." "I know," he said. "And I am not asking you to sing again. I am asking you to help me with something else, something unconventional." She frowned slightly. "Unconventional?" Ethan leaned forward. "I have an upcoming charity gala. The press expects me to appear with a partner. The truth is, I do not have one. My board believes a stable image helps the company. I need someone genuine, someone the public will believe in." She stared, unsure if she had heard correctly. "Are you saying you want me to pretend to be your girlfriend?" "Not just that," Ethan replied calmly. "For the duration of the event season, I need a fiancé. It is a public arrangement, purely contractual. In return, I will pay you $50,000. Lena blinked. The words barely made sense. $50,000? Enough to erase her debts, pay for her mother's treatments for a year, maybe even restart her music classes. "I do not understand," she whispered. "Why me?" Ethan looked at her for a long moment. "Because when you sang, you were not pretending. Everyone else in that room was performing. You were the only one who felt real." The room fell silent. The rain outside tapped softly against the window. He slid a folder across the desk. Inside was a brief contract, simple and clean. Duration, boundaries, payment. At the bottom, a single empty line for her signature. Lena stared at it, her pulse in her ears. "You are serious." "Completely," he said. "You can walk away if you wish. No pressure." She hesitated, thinking of the hospital bills, her mother's fragile smile, the empty fridge in her apartment. Finally, she met his eyes. When do we start? The simply summed the prize on the... Ethan's expression softened, the faintest curve of a smile touching his lips. Tonight, outside, thunder rolled in the distance, echoing through the city like a warning or perhaps a beginning. Lena exhaled slowly, unaware that by signing that single sheet of paper, she had just stepped into a world where nothing she thought was pretend would stay that way for long. That evening, Lena Cruz stood before a wall-length mirror inside a private suite on the top floor of the ward tower. Rows of evening gowns shimmered around her, each one more expensive than the last. A stylist fluttered nearby, adjusting fabrics, offering options in hushed tones. Ethan's assistant, Claire, handed Lena a sleek folder. "These are the event details," she explained. "The first gala is tomorrow night. You will arrive with Mr. Ward, smile for photographs, and greet the board members. Remember, the media believes you are his fiancée. There will be eyes everywhere." Lena nodded, still unsure if this was a dream or a mistake. "And after the gala?" "After the gala," Claire said, "you go home. No obligations beyond public appearances. It is all in the contract." When Claire left, Lena sank into a velvet chair, staring at the glittering gown spread across her lap. She had never owned anything like it. In her small apartment, her clothes hung on one shared rack beside her mother's winter coats. Now she was about to walk into a ballroom filled with millionaires, wearing something that probably cost more than a year's rent. A knock sounded on the door. Ethan stepped in, his usual sharp suit replaced by a dark turtleneck and blazer. His gaze softened when he saw her. "You look overwhelmed." Lena gave a nervous laugh. "That obvious?" "Very," he said with a faint smile. "You do not have to prove anything tonight. Just be yourself. That is what people notice about you." She hesitated, studying his reflection beside hers in the mirror. "Do you do this often? Hire strangers to pretend?" "Then ask her stand of guide." Ethan's smile faded slightly. "No. I usually hire people to build things, not feelings, but this time, it is different." The air between them shifted, quiet and heavy. For a moment, Lena thought she saw something vulnerable behind his composed expression, but it vanished as quickly as it came. The next night, the gala hall glowed with champagne light and 1,000 murmuring voices. Cameras flashed as the elevator doors opened, revealing Ethan with Lena on his arm. Her silver gown caught the light like starlight, the engraved promise microphone now replaced by a diamond bracelet Claire had lent her for the evening. "Smile," Ethan whispered as they stepped onto the carpet. "Remember, the story is that we met during a charity event and got engaged last month." She nodded, holding her chin high. "Right. A fairy tale." Reporters leaned in, microphones thrust forward. "Mr. Ward, congratulations on your engagement." "Who is the lucky woman?" Ethan's voice was steady. "This is Lena Cruz. She is the most genuine person I have ever met." Her cheeks burned. It was a line from the script Claire had written, but the way he said it sounded real. Cameras clicked furiously as flashes exploded like fireworks. Once inside, Ethan guided her through the crowd, introducing her to executives, investors, and board members. She smiled, shook hands, and repeated polite words that felt foreign in her mouth. Every compliment about her dress or voice bounced off her like echoes in a glass room. At dinner, a silver-haired board member raised his glass. "To Mr. Ward and his beautiful fiancée, may this partnership be as strong as the empire you built." Lena forced a smile, clinking her glass. Her fingers trembled slightly. Ethan noticed and reached under the table, his hand brushing hers, a silent reassurance. "Breathe," he murmured. "You are doing fine." Later, when the music began, he asked softly, "Would you like to dance?" "I do not know how," she admitted. "Then just follow me." "It's side that worgen in these song," and the wee venom tooted. He placed a hand at her waist, leading her gently onto the dance floor. The world around them blurred into soft lights and murmured laughter. She could feel the steady rhythm of his heartbeat through his shirt, calm and certain. When the song ended, applause rippled through the room. Ethan leaned closer, his voice low. "You passed the first test. They believe us." Lena smiled faintly, though her heart was still racing. "And what about you, Mr. Ward? Do you believe any of it?" He looked at her, his expression unreadable. "That is the dangerous part, Miss Cruz. I am starting to." For the first time, she forgot about the cameras, the contract, and the payment waiting at the end of the month. All she saw was the man in front of her, the one who had hired her to pretend, and the one who might be beginning to forget that it was supposed to be an act. The days that followed blurred into lessons, fittings, and schedules. Lena Cruz had traded her worn notebook and bar gigs for etiquette lessons and charity events. Every morning, Claire arrived with a list of appearances, and every evening, Lena collapsed in her apartment, exhausted but determined. The lie had grown legs and walked into every room she entered. The next major event was a private dinner for the Ward Foundation's top donors. Claire coached her until she could recite Ethan's biography as if she had lived it with him. She memorized details: his favorite wine, his philanthropic projects, the story of how they supposedly met during a benefit concert. It was a world of precision, practiced smiles, and glittering facades. Yet behind the polish, Lena began to see fragments of the man beneath the title. Ethan was meticulous but kind, exacting but strangely gentle when he looked at her. Sometimes, after the cameras left, he would loosen his tie and tell quiet stories about his father, who had built the company from a single office. There was a sadness in his eyes when he spoke of family, a loneliness she recognized. One afternoon, she arrived early at the office to drop off signed documents for Claire. As she stepped into the lobby, she saw Ethan in the conference room through the glass wall, surrounded by executives. His tone was calm, but his eyes were cold. The man who had danced with her at the gala looked like another person, now a strategist, calculating every word. She watched for a moment, realizing that in his world, warmth was a liability. Then he caught her reflection in the glass, and the mask fell away. He excused himself and stepped out. "Early today," he said, his voice softer now. "I thought I would help Claire with the new schedule," she replied. "You looked intense in there." He smiled faintly. "That is part of the job. Numbers do not care about feelings. The names of pays had of themselves. Maybe they should," she said quietly. For a heartbeat, neither of them spoke. The air between them hummed with something unspoken, fragile and real. Ethan cleared his throat. "We have another event tonight. The board expects us to attend together. It is a fundraiser for the new music scholarship." Her eyes widened. "A music scholarship?" He nodded. "I thought of you when they proposed it." That evening, the ballroom gleamed with crystal lights and the soft murmur of violins. Lena's gown was navy silk that shimmered under the chandeliers. As she walked beside Ethan, flashes erupted again, the press whispering her name. But this time, she did not feel like an imposter. Midway through the dinner, the event host tapped a glass for attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are honored tonight by the presence of Ethan Ward and his fiancée, Miss Lena Cruz. Mr. Ward has personally pledged to sponsor 10 full music scholarships for underprivileged students." The crowd applauded. Lena blinked, turning to him in surprise. "You did not tell me," he shrugged lightly. "I thought it would sound better coming from them." Emotion tightened her throat. For the first time, she realized he was not just helping her play a part. He was using his influence to change something she cared about. After the speeches, Ethan led her onto the terrace overlooking the city. The night air was cool, carrying the hum of traffic below. "You were amazing in there," he said. "The way you spoke with the donors, you make people believe in good things again." She smiled, leaning against the railing. "Maybe it is easier when you finally start believing them yourself." He looked at her for a long time. "Lena, when this arrangement ends, what will you do?" She hesitated. "Go back to singing, I guess. Maybe record the songs I never had time to finish." Ethan's eyes softened. "You should. You have a voice that deserves to be heard." A gust of wind lifted a strand of her hair. He reached out without thinking and tucked it behind her ear. His hand lingered, just for a second, and when she looked up, the world seemed to still. Then a door opened behind them. Claire's voice called out gently, "Mr. Ward, they are ready for the closing toast." Ethan stepped back, clearing his throat. "Right, duty calls." As he walked away, Lena stayed by the railing, the city lights flickering below. For the first time, she felt the line between pretend and truth beginning to blur, and it scared her more than she wanted to admit. 2 weeks later, the illusion had become second nature. Lena Cruz knew how to walk beside Ethan Ward without flinching from the cameras, how to answer questions with practiced grace, how to smile without showing fear. But what she could not learn was how to stop caring. Every time she caught him looking at her in a quiet room, the lines of the contract blurred a little more. The next event was the Ward Foundation's annual corporate summit, a grand affair packed with shareholders, reporters, and critics. It was not a celebration, but a battlefield disguised in champagne. Ethan warned her in the car. Tonight will be different. The board members can be sharp. They will look for cracks in our story. Just follow my lead. Lena nodded, her hands clasped in her lap. Do you trust me to handle it? Ethan's gaze softened. I would not have brought you if I did not. They didn't I'm heard about. And it no weth power. They didn't I'm and her to be happiness. Inside the ballroom, the crowd buzzed with whispers. Many of them had seen the headlines. Ethan Ward, engaged to unknown singer. Some called it romantic, others called it reckless. Cameras followed them as they stepped onto the stage for introductions. Ethan's speech was flawless, polished like every word had been carved from glass. When he mentioned his fiancée's passion for the arts and philanthropy, he turned toward her, offering a subtle nod. Lena stepped forward and smiled at the audience. Her voice did not tremble. It has been a privilege to see how much this foundation gives back. Music gave me hope when I had nothing else. If we can pass that hope to even one child, it is worth every note. Applause rippled through the hall. For a fleeting second, Ethan's expression softened pride mixed with something deeper. But the peace did not last long. At their table, a silver-haired investor named Richard Hale leaned closer with a smirk. You are quite the actress, Miss Cruz. Or is it Mrs. Ward yet? Lena smiled politely. Not yet, but soon, perhaps. Richard chuckled. Soon? You must be very persuasive to capture the heart of our dear CEO so quickly. His tone dripped with sarcasm. Tell me, where did you two meet again? Charity gala, was it? Very different with Cryer. Ethan's jaw tightened. But before he could answer, Lena spoke gently. Actually, it was music. He heard me sing when I was pretending to be someone else. Fitting, isn't it? Laughter broke the tension. Even Richard raised his glass, half amused, half defeated. Ethan's hand brushed hers under the table, a silent acknowledgement of her poise. As the night went on, the tension eased. But when the speeches ended, the CEO of a rival firm made a surprise announcement. We have arranged an impromptu performance from Mr. Ward's fiancée, the lovely Miss Cruz. Let us hear the voice that captured his heart. The crowd cheered. Lena froze. She had not prepared anything. Her eyes darted to Ethan, who looked just as startled. You do not have to, he whispered. But she shook her head. If I do not, they will think we are hiding something. She rose, heart hammering, and walked toward the small stage. The room fell quiet. A piano player waited, uncertain. She nodded at him and began to sing, Until Forever, the song she had written for her mother, the one Ethan had never heard. The melody filled the room, soft but unshakable. Every word was a confession wrapped in music. As she sang, she forgot about the contract, the cameras, the judgment. It was just her voice and the man who had turned her life upside down. When the last note faded, the silence was complete. Then the audience erupted in applause. Ethan stood, clapping first, his eyes shining in a way that no investor could miss. After the performance, as guests crowded around her with praise, Ethan leaned close and murmured, You realize you just made every one of them believe in us. She smiled, breathless. Was that not the point? He looked at her, his voice low. The point was to convince them, but I think you convinced me instead. For the first time, Lena could not tell where the act ended and the truth began. The man who had hired her to play a part was now looking at her as if she was the only real thing left in his world. Later that night, the city was quiet. The rain had finally stopped, leaving the streets slick with reflections of light. Lena Cruz and Ethan Ward stepped out of the car in front of his townhouse, both still charged from the energy of the gala. She had been silent the entire ride back, her mind spinning with what had just happened, the song, the applause, the way he had looked at her like she was the only person in the room. Ethan opened the door and gestured her inside. You should come in. You did not eat much at dinner. She hesitated. It is late. Then just tea, he said. Nothing more. Inside, the townhouse was nothing like his corporate world. It was warm, filled with soft lamplight, and shelves of books instead of awards. A record player hummed quietly in the corner, the faint crackle of an old jazz tune filling the space. Lena wrapped her arms around herself. I did not expect your home to feel human, Ethan chuckled. Most people expect steel and glass. But this place was my father's. He loved music. Used to play piano right there. He pointed toward the grand piano near the window. After he passed, I could not sell it. She walked over, brushing her fingers along the keys. Did you play too? I tried, he said, joining her. But I was better at numbers. My father said music and finance are the same, both about harmony and timing. Lena smiled softly. Then maybe you are more of a musician than you think. This salve. A quiet moment stretched between them. Outside, thunder rumbled faintly in the distance. Ethan's gaze lingered on her, his usual guarded expression softened by something she could not name. You were incredible tonight, he said finally. That song. You moved everyone in that room. She looked down. It was not part of the plan. I just sang what I felt. That is what made it real. His voice was low, almost tender. Lena, I know this started as a business arrangement, but do not, she interrupted gently. Do not say something you will regret later. He took a slow breath. I do not regret this. Not a single thing. Before she could respond, the power flickered. The room dimmed to candlelight as rain started again outside. She laughed softly. Seems even the weather wants to complicate things. Ethan smiled. Then let it. He reached for a candle, lighting it with a match. The glow cast soft shadows across his face. For a long moment, neither spoke. The distance between them felt fragile, almost sacred. Finally, Lena whispered, What happens when this contract ends, Ethan? When all of this, the dresses, the cameras, the headlines, is over? He looked at her. The flame reflected in his eyes. Then I hope what we have left is something real. The words settled between them like a promise. Lena wanted to believe him, but she had seen too much of his world, the power, the pressure, the cold perfection that ruled everything he touched. Could someone like him truly choose someone like her? When the stage lights went out, she turned away, her voice barely above a whisper. People like us do not get fairy tales. Ethan stepped closer, his voice steady. Maybe we make our own. For a heartbeat, their hands brushed, an electric thread pulling them closer. Then her phone buzzed on the counter, breaking the spell. She picked it up, reading the message. Her mother's condition had worsened. Her face paled. I have to go. I will drive you, Ethan said instantly. At the hospital, the machines beeped softly in the sterile light. Lena sat beside her mother's bed, holding her frail hand. Ethan waited quietly in the hallway, his presence steady but distant, respecting her space. When the doctor left, she stepped out, exhausted. Ethan handed her a cup of coffee. How is she? She will need another round of treatment. The cost just doubled. Her voice cracked. He looked at her gently. Do not worry about that. I will take care of it. She met his eyes. Why? Because you matter, he said simply. That night, as they stood beneath the hospital's dim light, Lena realized that Ethan Ward, the man who had once hired her to play pretend, had just done something no contract could command. He had shown her the kind of kindness that felt dangerously close to love. By the next morning, news of the gala performance had flooded every business column. CEO Ethan Ward's fiancée stuns investors with emotional song. Some called it romantic. Others accused it of being a publicity stunt. Lena Cruz avoided reading any of it, but she could feel the shift in the air when she arrived at Ward Tower later that week. Eyes followed her in the lobby. Whispers trailed behind her heels. When she stepped into Ethan's office, he was already standing by the window, his phone pressed to his ear. His jaw was tight. No, I said, the rumor is false, he snapped quietly. She is not part of any PR scheme. He paused, then lowered his voice. Yes, I am aware of the board's concerns. I will handle it. He ended the call and turned toward her. They are questioning the engagement now. Some think you were planted to manipulate public sentiment. Lena folded her arms, her voice calm but steady. That is not true, and you know it. I know, he said, his tone softening. But in their world, truth matters less than perception. A knock at the door interrupted them. Claire entered, her face pale. Ethan, you need to see this. She handed him a tablet. On the screen was a gossip headline that made Lena's stomach twist. Singer's secret, the fake bride who lied her way into a millionaire's life. The article showed photos of her before the contract, performing at bars, struggling to pay rent, even standing outside the hospital. Every line was a dagger. She used a sick parent to gain sympathy. A classic gold digger fairy tale. Lena's breath caught. How did they get this? Ethan scrolled through the article. his expression dark. Someone leaked your background. Only a handful of people had access to those details. His eyes flicked toward Claire. The event company. Maybe one of their PR managers. Claire shook her head. It might be worse. The journalist credited the photos to Richard Hale's media firm. Lena's pulse spiked. The investor from the summit? Ethan nodded grimly. He wanted leverage against me. He will use you to get it. Lena felt her throat tighten. Then end the contract, Ethan. Save yourself the trouble. He stepped closer, his voice quiet but firm. No, I will not abandon you because of their noise. Before she could reply, his phone buzzed again. He answered, listening silently. When he hung up, his expression was like glass. The board called an emergency meeting. They want to review the engagement and the foundation's reputation. They are threatening to suspend my position until this clears. Lena's heart sank. Because of me? Because of them, he corrected. Because they cannot stand the idea that someone like me could choose someone like you. That afternoon, the building buzzed with tension. Lena waited outside the boardroom, hearing muffled voices through the glass. Ethan's calm baritone cut through the noise. You are asking me to lie to say this relationship is fabricated, when the truth is that she has done more good for this company's image than any marketing campaign in years. An older voice replied coldly. Then prove it, Ethan. End the charade publicly, or risk your seat. The doors opened minutes later. Ethan walked out, shoulders squared, but there was something stormy in his eyes. They gave me an ultimatum, he said quietly. Either I distance myself from you or step down as CEO. Lena's chest tightened. You cannot risk everything for this, for me. He shook his head. I will not let them define what is real in my life. Ethan, she said softly, this started as a contract. You do not owe me anything. He met her gaze. Maybe I do not, but I want to. That night, the headlines changed again. Ethan Ward had publicly defended her in front of reporters, declaring that he would not deny the woman who taught him what authenticity meant. The press called it reckless, romantic, and unprofessional. Lena watched the broadcast from her small apartment, tears blurring the screen. Her heart ached with pride and fear. She knew what his defiance would cost him. For the first time, she understood that the man who had hired her to pretend was now risking everything for something he could no longer fake something real. The following morning, the city was awake before dawn. News vans lined the street outside Ward Financial. Reporters waited like vultures for a statement from the man who had just defied his own board of directors on live television. Inside the building, Ethan Ward stood in front of his office window, the skyline painted in pale gray. He had not slept. The board had given him 24 hours to retract his statement or face removal, but the decision had already been made in his heart. Claire entered quietly, holding a folder. They are serious this time, Ethan. The shareholders are panicking. If you walk away now, you lose everything you have built. He looked at her, his tone steady. Then maybe it was not worth building if it cost me my integrity. Claire hesitated, lowering her voice. And her? What happens to Lena when this is over? His expression softened. She deserves peace. If stepping down gives her that, then so be it. Across the city, Lena Cruz sat at her mother's hospital bedside, staring at the television in the corner of the room. Every channel replayed the same footage. Ethan defending her name, his voice calm but firm. The woman you are questioning is not a scheme. She is the most genuine person I have ever met. Her mother squeezed her hand weakly. He believes in you, sweetheart. Lena swallowed hard. Yes, but believing in me might destroy him. Her mother smiled faintly. Then do something before it does. There one is people doomed down. A little god. Hours later, Lena walked into the ward tower, her nerves raw but her decision clear. The security guard tried to stop her, but she pushed past with a quiet determination. She found Ethan still in his office, surrounded by stacks of documents he no longer cared about. He looked up as she entered. Lena, you should not be here. The press. I do not care about the press, she said. I came to end this. He frowned. And what? The contract. The lie. The headlines. All of it. You are losing your company, Ethan. You cannot throw that away from me. He stood, closing the distance between them. You think this is still about the contract? Is it not? She whispered. No, he said quietly. It stopped being about that the night you sang. You made me remember why I started all of this in the first place, to build something meaningful. And if I lose it because I chose honesty, then maybe I am finally doing something right. Tears welled in her eyes. You are impossible. He smiled faintly. So are you. Before she could respond, the glass doors opened behind them. Cameras flashed. Richard Hale and two board members stepped in, flanked by reporters. I hope you are enjoying your last day as CEO, Richard sneered. By tomorrow, Ward Financial will have new leadership and a cleaner reputation. Ethan did not flinch. A reputation without truth is nothing. So did Israel the dastard as Rallable gribe. Richard turned to the reporters. This is the woman who deceived the company for money. Ask her what she was paid to play this role. Lena's hands trembled, but she lifted her chin. Yes, I was paid. At first. But not to deceive anyone. I was paid to pretend for a man who had forgotten what real meant. And somewhere along the way, neither of us were pretending anymore. The room fell silent. Cameras clicked in. Rapid bursts. Ethan stepped beside her, taking her hand openly. If defending her cost me my title, then let it. I would rather lose everything than lose the one person who reminded me how to live honestly. The board members exchanged uneasy glances. The tension hung thick until Claire entered, carrying a tablet. You might want to see this, she said, handing it to Richard. The screen displayed the company's livestock data rising instead of falling. The public reaction to Ethan's speech had flipped overnight. Social media overflowed with support. Finally, a CEO with a heart. Authenticity over image. Ward Financial stands for integrity. Richard's smug expression faltered. This will not last. Ethan met his gaze. It already has. Later, when the reporters cleared, Ethan and Lena stood alone in the quiet office. She exhaled shakily. You risked everything. He shook his head. No, I just finally chose what mattered. The rising of quieto govry wild as serpent in sips and agoe. Lena smiled through tears. So what happens now? He looked at her with a calm certainty that melted the last of her fear. Now, Miss Cruz, we stop pretending. Outside, the city roared with life. For the first time, neither of them cared what the world thought. The story that began as a contract had become something no one could fabricate, truth disguised as love, finally unmasked. A month later, the storm had passed. The tabloids had found a new scandal. The board had retreated into silence, and the city had moved on. But for Ethan Ward and Lena Cruz, life had taken a quieter shape, simpler, softer, and real. It was late afternoon when the sun poured through the wide glass windows of a small music cafe in Brooklyn. The sign outside read, The Promise Room. Inside, the air smelled of coffee, varnished wood, and hope. At the center of the room stood a small stage, where Lena adjusted the microphone engraved with one familiar word, promise. The place had once been a forgotten cafe. Now it was her own, renovated and reopened with Ethan's help, not as a grand investment, but as a gift of faith. The cafe hosted open mic nights for struggling artists, the kind of people Lena used to be. Every Friday, she sang the first song to open the night. Ethan sat at his usual table near the front. No suit jacket, no cameras, just a man in a simple shirt, his sleeves rolled to the elbows, watching her like the world had finally found color again. Lena tapped the mic. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. Tonight's song is not new. It is about keeping your word, even when the world doubts you. The audience quieted as she began to sing Until Forever. Her voice carried warmth and strength, every note a reflection of the road she had walked. She no longer sang from fear or desperation, but from gratitude. When she finished, the room erupted in applause. Ethan rose, clapping along with everyone else. But instead of staying in his seat, he walked toward the stage. Lena blinked, surprised as he climbed the steps beside her. He smiled at her, then turned to the crowd. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Ethan Ward, and I owe everything to the woman standing next to me. The audience murmured, phones rising instinctively to capture the moment. Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Lena's breath caught. Ethan? He opened it slowly. Inside was a ring. Simple, elegant. A single diamond, surrounded by a silver band engraved with the same word that had followed them from the beginning. Promise, he said softly. The word that changed everything for me. The night you sang at that fake wedding, I thought it was just a performance. I did not realize it was the beginning of something real. You showed me what honesty looks like, what love feels like. Lena's eyes shimmered. Ethan, you do not have to do this here. I do, he interrupted gently, because the first time you sang, I fell in love quietly. Tonight, I want everyone to hear it out loud. The crowd held its breath. Ethan knelt on one knee. Lena, Cruz, will you marry me? For real, this time no contracts, no cameras, just us. For a moment the world stood still. Then tears rolled down her cheeks as she whispered, yes. The cafe erupted in cheers. Ethan slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her close as the audience clapped and whistled. Later that night, after the last guest had left, Lena sat on the edge of the stage, her head resting on Ethan's shoulder. The microphone lay between them, its silver surface catching the glow of the hanging lights. You kept your promise, she said softly. He smiled. So did you. Outside, the city lights twinkled like distant stars, and somewhere beyond the noise, a piano melody drifted through an open window. A song of second chances, of truth and of love born from the unlikeliest of beginnings. In that quiet space, surrounded by everything they had fought for, Lena realized the truth she had once doubted. Sometimes the lines between pretending and reality blur not to deceive, but to reveal what the heart always knew. The girl who once sang as a fake bride had become the woman a billionaire chose to love for real. And as the final chords of Until Forever faded into the night, their story ended exactly where it began, with a promise kept.